April 19th. We'll call the meeting to order on April 19th here on Lopez. I'm Peggy Bill. I'm the vice chair standing in for Brian, who's over there on Orcas. So I'll be chairing the meeting today. We'll start off with the land acknowledgement. Thank you. I was getting a look. Let us acknowledge we reside on and care for the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people who have stewarded and called this place home since time immemorial. And let us honor inherent Aboriginal and treaty rights that have been passed down from generation to generation. So we'll open up with any general public comments. So just for those of you who might not know, we have public comment period in the beginning and then also at the end. So anybody has any comments now? Tracy.
Hey, I'm Tracy Cottingham and I want to welcome the Land Bank to Lopez. I think is this your first monthly meeting on Lopez in a number of years. So thank you for coming our way and I wanted to be here. So thanks.
Thanks, Tracy. Anybody else? Roger.
I'm Roger Ellison, president of the San Juan Island Range, and we have a contingent of rangers here who are excited to see how the land bank operates. It's our first land, as far as I know, it is for me, first land bank meeting to attend and interested to see how you do things.
There we go. You should go.
And I will be answering questions when it comes time, 10 o'clock to do lease reviews.
Yes.
Okay.
You should swing by our range while you're here. Okay, so we'll move into the March 15th meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments, changes?
I will say Amy sent me one correction and I've made that. She was not at the March meeting. Sorry, Amy.
Well, I was glad you submitted a revised version from the first one that you sent out. I was like, wow, who wrote this? This is not Tanya.
No, that was a glitch.
Any changes, comments? Okay, then hearing no changes or comments, then the minutes are approved. So next on our agenda. Partner updates. Is Vicky here? Doesn't look like the Preservation Trust is online. Do we need to?
Not in the waiting room.
Yeah.
I guess we'll be fine without them.
She may show up a little later since.
We will accommodate that.
Yeah, which is better.
Okay. And we do have Christine. Councilmember Christine Minnie is here. So Christine, we'd love to hear from you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
She must be in the East Coast.
There she is.
Can you see me? Hair down, not typical. Happy Friday. It's beautiful. I hope we're all outside for some part of today, and I suspect being on Lopez is pretty fantastic. I am here to report on a few fun things and a few important things. San Juan County will hold its annual hazardous waste roundup collection events. So get your chemicals ready. The events will be held from 10 to 2 at the solid waste facilities on San Juan Island, which will be May 4th, Lopez Island, May 11th, and Orcas Island, June 1st. This year, there will also be an event hosted on Decatur on June 15th. The roundup offers the opportunity to dispose of up to 25 gallons of hazardous waste free of charge. Dr. Frank James, our health officer for San Juan County, announced his resignation at the March Board of Health meeting.
Wow.
He did serve in that role for 31 years
Wow.
and led us through a pandemic 8 times better than the next best county in Washington state, according to the Seattle Times. And his last day is tomorrow, which means that we needed a very easily identifiable interim health officer, which was appointed at our Tuesday meeting, I believe. And it is the state health officer who will be standing in temporarily. His name is Herbie Duber. That will just be temporary while we work to identify the next San Juan County health officer. Tomorrow? No, Saturday. Is today the 19th? Yeah. Okay. So tomorrow, April 20th, is the Great Islands cleanup. And if you are on Orcas Island and you want to participate, you can go to the Village Green in East Sound at 10 a.m. to pick up bags, vests, and grabbers. If you're on San Juan Island, it's 10 a.m. as well at the San Juan Island Brewing Company. And since we're all a little more fun over, on San Juan Island, you will be able to get some cookies and some coffee and, something to fuel you up for your cleaning endeavors. And Lopez Village Park is where you will meet on Lopez at 10 a.m. to also pick up bags and vests and grabbers. When I was on the website the other day, I noticed the data from the fall cleanup, and I just thought it was worth sharing. There were 164 volunteers who collected a whopping 1,800 pounds of litter from 50 miles of roads and beaches. Council recently approved the award and distribution of $45,000 to the 3 family resource centers in San Juan County, which means $15,000 each. And that money is directed toward emergency rental assistance for those who need it. Last but not least, and I know Brian's waiting for this, the search to identify a new county manager is progressing. It's progressing well and swiftly, which is really important under the circumstances we're in. This past week, council assessed the qualifications of the applicants brought forth from the review process. And we are now figuring out how to best bring those finalists to our island, or to our county, islands to our county, and we will be holding community panel discussions, and we will hold community meetings, and this will happen over the course of 2 days, and it's actually imminent. It will be May 6th and 7th. I can say the finer details of what those days look like are still being worked out as to locations and time, so more to come, but it is being very deliberately planned. And that's it for me today. Yes, Brian.
Christine, good morning. I just
morning.
wanted to thank you and the other council members for that. As you know, I've been urging for a public or series of public meetings, even better, to meet the county manager candidates and have a dialogue with the public for a long time. So I think it's a really good move on the part of council. And I hope you'll do the same eventually for the DCD director. But thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome, Brian. Thank you. Okay.
Any other
Back
questions?
to Lopez.
Back to Lopez. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Okay, moving into commissioner reports, chair and commissioner reports. So just, I want to point out, we have Brian, Anne Marie, and Amy commissioners online. Anybody want to report out? Come on, everybody.
Looks like Brian.
Brian, let's go to Sandon. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. Well, I attended the Climate and Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting. Unfortunately, there was a glitch with Teams, so I wasn't able to say anything, but I could hear everything. They're working on a climate plan to be incorporated with the county plan. And at the moment, they are looking for climate ambassadors to spread the word and gather input from the public. And let's see, oh, and we also met in the ag leasing committee a few times and had some members of one of the lease applicants.
What, can I ask, what are they looking for in the ambassadors, the climate ambassadors? Are they given questions to go out and ask the public? What's the?
Yes, and there are several public events that they will be at, so a lot of Saturday markets and also let's see, there are days set up for like birthday, for example. So they will have booths and tables. If you go on their website, they have, it's not an application, but it gives you a general idea of what they're looking for. And they will have classes too, so like, you want to caught flat-footed without your notes like I am this morning.
Hey. Oh, Brian.
Good morning. I wanted to mention that Anne Marie and Tyler and I will be hosting a land bank table at the Orcas Earth Day event tomorrow. This is something that Peter and Sandy and I did last year, and I think it was very successful. We made a lot of contacts and met some new people that we didn't know. So it was a good exchange, and I'm looking forward to it. Apparently, from what I hear, the Orcas event is the only one in the islands this year, aside from the Great Islands cleanup on the other islands. So anyway, should be a good event put on by San Juan Makers. Also, next month, at the end of next month, there will be a gathering of eagles canoe landing on the three islands. I think that they're going to Orcas on May 19th, San Juan on May 20th, I think, and Orcas on May 22nd. And we will be doing an event at the Coho Preserve with the Lummi. This is a Lummi event and community. So we're going to be doing, I think, a walkthrough at Coho, and Jenny DeGroot will be hosting some kind of a stream restoration seminar, mostly for everybody, talking about the progress we've made in introducing some salmonins into the stream, and that we're trying to get more stream flow for better habitat. So I hope that the land bank commissioners and staff are going to do events in connection with the Lummies on the other islands too. I think that this is will be a good opportunity to make friends and hopefully new relationships. One additional thing, also in connection with the Lummi, there was a quick news item, at least on Orcas last week, that a non-profit group called Saucy Law, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a Lummi nonprofit led by the former Lummi tribal chair, Jay Julius, has acquired 2 2 acres of land on Madrona Point, to
Yeah.
add to the point. And, pardon me? Somebody say 3? Okay, I think it's 2 acres. And Jay Julius expressed once again his hope that Madrona Point would one day be open again and that they would be able to build a tribal cultural center that would be open and as a place for connections with the entire community. And that is in connection with the master plan for Madrona Point that was adopted, 30 years ago now. So I think that this is really important, and it's one of the reasons that we should, as a land bank, that we should continue to forge those relationships with the Lummi, and I'm hoping for a bright future with that. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Brian. I'm really glad you brought that up, because I totally agree with you. So the canoe journeys on Lopez, Sunday, May 19th, they're gonna be at Spencer Spit. And we'll have a celebration potluck and then a protocol at the community center that evening. So we've had a number of these. I've never gone to one out at Spencer Spit. And then the second is the challenge paddle of the Coast Salish Youth Coalition, which came through last year, the Blue Heron Canoe Journey. They'll land at Odland Park, July 11th and leave on July 14th. And there'll be a potluck and protocol on July 13th. And I totally agree with you. These are great opportunities to meet people and interact and support these journeys. And the youth journeys, it's really amazing. They came through last year and there were little kids and teenagers, and it was just so fun. Really amazing to watch. So anyway, thanks for bringing that up.
I just wanted to add, Brian, I believe the display is still on at the Orca Center of the Lummi Art Show. That opened a couple of weeks ago that I attended. It was fascinating. If anybody has time, happens to be over on Orcas when they're open. And Peter Fisher gave a great presentation at that event. So.
Okay.
I'll just jump in, Chair, too, that I'll be joining the Coast Salish Youth Coalition hosts a camas harvest and bake on Whidbey Island. It's kind of an invite thing, and I'll be helping out there for 3 days. I think it's in the first week of May this year. So great event.
I heard really positive things about it last year. That's great. Any other commissioner reports? Gone. There's a Zoom user. I don't know. We don't know who that is. So we still haven't heard from the Preservation Trust. I will say that they are having their annual meeting on May 9th. And that'll be over on, at the Yacht Club on San Juan. So we'll report on that for them. Okay,
Will you be attending?
I will, yeah.
I'll be there.
I can be there. Okay. Moving along. First quarter financial report. There's Aaron. Aaron?
Yep. Hi, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but happy I can still find the time to get this one in today for you. I guess I probably should have taken some consulting advice from Christine on how to do these things from your car, but a little technically different. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that all right? Okay, so this is the first quarter reporting in 2024. This is based on the budget numbers here are based off of the approved 2024 budget that was approved by the council on December 12th, 2013. And we'll start out here with the Conservation Area Fund. First thing to note, cash on hand increased by 38,000 to 911,000, almost 912,000. So total current assets between cash and LGIP or the local government investment pool sits at just over 5.4 million. With the current interest rate for the LGIP sitting at 5.4%. We have discussed, or I have discussed with Marilyn on putting more of our cash on hand into our LGIP while interest rates are still high. We've kind of talked through a few different scenarios on how to just put some of that money to work for us while these interest rates are high. So going into the second quarter review, we'll see lower cash balance on hand, but higher LGIP funds sitting there. In terms of debt payments, so far first quarter, we haven't made any payments on our long-term debt and bonds that we have. We also have the interfund loan with the stewardship fund for helping with the acquisition of Glenwood, but that will be made in the second quarter also. So right now there is no change between fourth quarter 2023 and first quarter 2024. Into some more specifics regarding revenues and expenditures in the first quarter. As you can see, our REIT, or our real estate excise tax, which is our main funding source for the program, came in at 503,000 for the first quarter. That number is that's low. If you look at the monthly breakdown from the previous 3 years, we are trending, a little bit of a slow start to the month, but we do know that there were some big closings in the last month or so that just haven't hit the register, but something to keep an eye on, and hopefully we can get back on track. Being that first quarter, we're sitting at 13.41% of our budget, which we budgeted pretty conservatively at 3.75 million. So just something to keep an eye on moving forward. Nothing too dramatic right now. Revenue from that LGIP, or local government investment pool, for the first quarter was high, 61,000. That's due to that interest rate, and which led us to make that decision to put more cash on hand into that LGIP fund so that can generate more revenue for us. The sale of land, 421, that was for the conservation easement on Katy Mountain with the Preservation Trust. That was done in February. On to expenditures. Not too much right now outside of just administrative expenses. We did make our first quarter transfer to stewardship for operations, and that was 648,000. We'll make that the first 3 quarters, and then when we get farther along in the year, we will make that fourth quarter transfer closer to actual spending that was done in stewardship. So for right now, each quarter, for the first 3, will be transferring 648,548. Acquisition costs, this 217,000, this is for the $200,000 there is on the promissory note for Hauschka Katy Mountain acquisition. We have 1 more year on that. next year, each year at 20 or $200,000 there plus interest. And that's what's reflected here is that $20,000 in interest on that promissory note. And that's pretty much all the action here for first quarter. There's usually not a whole lot of activity in the first quarter, but we did have that sale of land and the Hauschka Katy Mountain payment. So I'm going to go back up here to our stewardship fund. We'll knock this one out here and then I can field questions if you have any. First off, see cash on hand here did decrease by 1.2 million. This is something you'll see most likely again here in the going into the second quarter for both funds, as that 1.26 million that was a transfer to the conservation, or sorry, to the stewardship and management funds, LGIP. Also, we also call that the endowment fund. That's kind of our savings account there. So we did make that transfer, and we will continue to put more money into that fund as we go along here. But overall, total current assets, or cash on hand, it did increase by 275,000 to just over 6.1 million total. All right. Oh, sorry. On to revenues and expenditures for the first quarter. The LGIP fund did receive 53,000 in interest revenue. Also reflected here in revenue is the transfer reflected from the Conservation Area Fund for site enhancement. And then some smaller, plant material sales and property ag lease revenue there. Expenditures for the first quarter, stewardship, property management, maintenance. This is kind of the one that we see where a lot of the activity gets done on the ground, contracted work, anything site specific, property specific projects that we had budgeted. We're starting to get those off the ground here a little bit. I'd say most of this at this point has been consulting on some of our preserves that we're working on getting open here this year. So that is sitting at 18.37% of the total annual budget at this point. So things are getting off to a good start of, getting some early work done to set up the rest of the year. And some small signage and some small items for site enhancement, but nothing major at this point. And yeah, that's pretty much it for first quarter. I think everything seems to be on track. We're working through the budget well here and getting off to a good start. Again, just keeping an eye on the REIT revenue and seeing what trends happen there, just following it as we go. And that's probably the biggest thing to keep an eye on for this year at this point. Are there any questions?
I just wanted to throw something in there for the stewardship side too, is just to kind of put in a plug that the budgets were produced before the 32-hour work week came along. And so we have a reduction in amount of sort of staff capacity. We lost the county parks position that was working with us because of that as well. So I anticipate some of the things that we budgeted not happening essentially just because we have less capacity.
So I'm the financial connection between the board and the staff, and I met yesterday with Lincoln and Aaron and went over the financials. And with a couple of specific goals in my mind, and these are not conclusive because I have a lot of other thoughts about how we discuss our financial situation. But as you heard Aaron say, I think it's very important for us always to keep as much invested as possible beyond what we actually need. The the way we work with the treasurer's office is simply to send a memo to the treasurer requesting the transfer into local government investment pool or requesting it come back into cash when we need it. It's a really easy and short transaction. So I would like to take advantage of that. And obviously the interest rates are high now, but even when they aren't this high, this is revenue toward the program. So I think that's important. Another thing that have raised, and I don't think we've come to a way to deal with this yet, but the fact is that the stewardship fund lent millions of dollars to the acquisition fund in order to purchase the North Shore property. And that does not show up as a liability on the balance sheet because the explanation was that it's an inter-fund loan. But one of the things I'm very interested in is what our assets for stewardship are and what our expenditures for stewardship are, because they are becoming a much larger part of the land bank's financial picture as we have more properties. And it's a convoluted picture, as Doug just mentioned, because we have more properties to care for. We have fewer labor hours available right now. And we don't currently have a lot of acquisitions going on. So there will be some more work done by the staff to show us the growth of those costs over time. The other very important part to me is when I look at the stewardship financial statement, I would like to see how much money we really are going to have should the whole world shut down and we have only our resources to depend on. And right now we're looking at $4.3 million in LGIP on the stewardship fund. And in fact, if we added $2 million of receivable, we have $6 million that will become available once those final two payments are made. I think that's an important story that we should be telling, or that we should know ourselves, particularly because we're going into a year in which we'll be discussing the possibility of REIT continuing or not continuing. And it's important to know what our resources are. And so anyway, my point is simply that we've started to talk about, in my view anyway, Erin, simplifying and making clearer some of these basic points based on the stories we want to be able to tell the public the truth. I'm sorry, I'm not talking about making up stories. The truth that we want to show the public about how we are utilizing the funds that we receive from REIT and other sources. I think this is going to be an ongoing project, and Aaron's up to his ears. There's going to be a conversion in accounting software that's going to take up some time, but hopefully that will enable him to create different ways of looking at this information that are a little bit simpler perhaps, so he doesn't have to do so much work himself to make the picture clear. My personal experience with the county over many years is that it's really difficult to read county financial information and understand anything at all, and it has to be interpreted. So that's basically what I'm asking us to do, is take a more affirmative stance on interpreting the information. And I think that's all I have to say right now. Excellent. Please correct me if I missed anything, Lincoln. I think that's basically what we talked about.
I have questions. So I appreciate both Aaron and Marilyn working on this, and Lincoln too. So the expenses for the transfers to stewardship, wait, which one was I looking at? Oh, I know, the expenditures for stewardship management, property management and maintenance, and site enhancement. They all sound like the same thing, but I know they're not. So I'm
Yep,
curious.
So stewardship management, that's more of the admin costs. That's where all the payroll is, some travel, subscriptions, publication, advertising, more of the admin office side, including payroll. Property management and maintenance, that's where the bulk of the work gets done from our stewardship staff. Supplies, rental equipment, excavators. It also includes contracted work for restoration and management, and maintenance on the ground. Regular maintenance, nothing that would be a capital expense. So All of that stuff, that's where a lot of the grunt work gets done and a lot of the work on the ground gets done, including it also does include a lot of our consultants that help pull together, lay the groundwork in landscape design and reporting, so that our staff knows, how to proceed forward on bigger projects. And then site enhancement, that is capital expenditures. So those are things that we do, that add value to the preserves themselves. Things that, like gates, permanent fixtures and structures. If we add new trail, add interpretive signage, things that are permanent fixtures that add value to the property outside of regular management and maintenance. So that's the difference between the three of those.
So, hey, Aaron, this is Mike. The first two line items that Peggy referred to, what labor I misunderstood your comment. Did you say all of the labor of the stewardship group falls into stewardship management? Or is it?
So that's where payroll comes out of.
So all the labor costs we have goes into that one line.
Correct.
Stewardship management, none of it into property management. That's where contracts and things go.
Yes.
Inside, okay, yeah, it's interesting, okay. I think, to that point, maybe to keep from me asking that question month after month, we could do a better job of the line item description.
Could be a
Then
footnote.
a footnote, either
Yeah,
one,
or just
or
change the description.
just a way to glance and go, oh yeah, that's where labor goes, oh yeah, that's where other outside costs go, and that would be helpful.
Okay.
And
No
I really like, what I think you're looking at is, if we can see how those costs are projected to go out and how they've changed over time. So, yeah, totally support that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do have one other question about this, if I could. Aaron, in your presentation, you made the comment when talking about REIT that while it's running low, there are some transactions that took place in March, I'm assuming, that didn't get reflected in the REIT total. That, I mean, is that substantial? Because 500,000 is a pretty low nut for Q1.
Yeah, it's definitely a low number. With Rosario closing, that's a big one. That isn't reflected in this. And there's a few others also that aren't quite that large, but things that we've just caught wind of that I can't, speak to specifically and directly, but here in April, we should see a much higher jump than what we have been seeing here to start the year.
I understand. Thanks. Rosario is a pretty significant number, so.
What did it actually sell for? 20?
So the Rosario transaction, I think there are 4 separate transactions. So the first one was 6.5. I think the total is scheduled to be something 22 or 23 million, something like that. Not really sure what it is, but in that ballpark.
A goodly number.
Yeah, so that'll unfold over, I guess, the next few months, toward the end of the year. I don't know what the timing is.
All the more reason to put money into LGIP.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Brian has a question.
Oh, Brian.
Yeah, I'm trying to put together in my mind your question, Peggy, and Mike's about the stewardship expenditures, along with the comment that Doug made a little while ago about the 32-hour work week. And I'm wondering whether there's any trend over time toward contracting more of our stewardship and maintenance expenses, or if there should be.
Well, in terms of contracts this year, we've already we've done in this first quarter about 3/4 of the amount of contracts that we do in a typical year already. So the stewardship staff overall between all three districts has increased the amount of contracted work. And this is something we did discuss going into the budgeting process is, you know, if possible, look from that lens that contracting some of this work might be beneficial. In terms of, you know, each individual district and their timing for the need for those may vary on a bulk of the large bulk of these are happening on Orcas and in District 2, just with the time frame, especially with the North Shore property and what's going on there. So there has been a little bit more attention to seeing if contracting more gives the staff more time to be on the ground. I mean, you contract more, that also means you're on the phone more and you're in the office more trying to pull these scopes together and things like that. So I think it's a balance that we'll get sorted out over time.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to track that and take a second look in a while.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Okay. As a total aside, it makes me question, Amanda, you've hired somebody, haven't you? For the summer?
Yes,
Seasonal?
Lopez has hired a seasonal field assistant who will start next week, Cedar Charnley. Really excited to have him on board. We're gonna get a lot done, yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh,
How old is Cedar? I mean, like an adult?
probably-
totally adult, yeah.
Your parents are 45. Okay.
We can't ask those.
No,
questions.
I people grow up.
Adult.
Okay, adult, yeah, that was.
and his family owns land adjacent to the Watmo Head property. That
Yeah,
is
he is.
exciting. Wow. Okay. So moving on, I think we are gonna have the director's report now. And I just want to say, if people have questions, hold them, we will get to them, or put them in the chat. Right?
Right.
Right. Okay, Lincoln, you're on.
All right.
Oh, that's exciting.
I might explain it. Great. So we've done the land acknowledgement. We can go to the next slide. First thing I want to talk about is the strategic plan. I did go to council a couple of times with the strategic plan. In the last iteration, they did make a few changes. We can go on to the next slide. Nothing really major, keep going. So those are reflected in what you see underlined and bolded, which is hard to see on the screen. But this is goal 4, so it's about organizational goals. And the strategy number 4. So at the end there was a desire to see that we added something about tribes. So we put in coordinating with the county on overarching policy regarding tribes, which I think is totally appropriate. And then number 5, strategy number 5, we did add in something about incorporating the updated acquisition process, which is something that we went through with county administration through 2022 and 23, just really trying to clarify how the acquisition process works, and also how the prosecuting attorney will review things. So we have updated both of those. We can come back to you and talk about those if you like. It's not a riveting presentation, I'll say that, but important nonetheless. So those are the changes that council requested that we've put in. I just wanted to make sure no one had any issues with those. Otherwise, we are ready to put this out to the public and get comments.
Is,
Any objections?
I have no objection. Question. The policy regarding working with the tribes, isn't there already something, or is this just for the land bank?
No.
It's for all of
It's
the
for the
county.
entire county. So the county is really in the process of figuring out how it can work with tribes. It's still
Right.
very much a work in progress. So that's what that is referencing. It's not just the land bank working with tribes, it's the rest of the county as well. And they're working through countywide policy on that question. So we'll work within that framework.
And is there one department that's leading that, or one person? Is that?
Yeah, Frankie Robinson is from Environmental Stewardship, is spearheading that effort with a lot of help from other folks.
Brian has his hand up.
Brian?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Lincoln, when we're talking about incorporating the updated acquisition process, well, two things. Incorporating into what? And second, what is it that we're incorporating? Are we incorporating basically the presentation, that you gave to council previously, or are we talking about the procedural flow chart that Sandy did a year or two ago?
Yeah, so the flow chart that Sandy did really led into the development of what you saw me present to council this week. So it's really just a series of steps and how we go about doing transactions, whether we're purchasing property or selling property. And I think the main concern with council is just they're wanting to be really clear on exactly what's happening and what their responsibilities are, so that they can make good decisions when these projects come in front of them. It can get quite, it can be buried sometimes when you put an acquisition project into an annual budget, for example, and then that gets incorporated into the county's annual budget, and things can get lost in that procedure rather easily. So this is an effort just to make sure that council can stay on top of what's happening.
Okay, I understand that, having been through it a couple of times. But given that we have, well, there are several relatively new commissioners here, and also that the strategic plan is a document also intended for the public, I think that statement as it's written is totally opaque. So we need to say something. We need to give it a little better explanation, I think. And it's hard to do in one sentence or one line, but that's all.
Well, I'm open to suggestions. And I will say that this is the language that was proposed. Well, actually, no, I inserted this language, but council approved the language. They're okay with it. I think if we really want to get into that acquisition process, we can, that needs to be addressed separately, quite honestly. I don't think there's a way to phrase that so that it's clearer. It is by definition opaque, quite honestly.
Yeah, yes, it is.
It's in this plan with many things in it.
No, I'm not suggesting that we fully explain the process, because it's a very complicated flow chart that's almost incomprehensible, I think. I guess what I think we're saying is facilitate better communication with council and the county in making our acquisitions. I guess I'd
Yeah,
say.
that is what I'm saying. The specific recommendation from a council member was to make reference to that acquisition process and the prosecuting attorney's review procedure that's been established. So I needed to get that language into this, even though it may not help in terms of understanding exactly what we're talking about. That was the important point. If we want to really make clearer what that means, I can bring back the presentation I did for council to the Land Bank Commission, so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that. I just think maybe a statement about communication with council. Maybe we can address that a little more directly.
Okay. We'll think of something.
Okay.
So I have a question. I think I've brought this up numerous times, but in terms of our communication with the tribes, are we seeing any progress in terms of an awareness that we need to have kind of timely responses and that there's an ability to do that?
Well, I think what you're asking about is communicating via council in a government to government fashion. We haven't really had further discussions on that. And I think that where we're going to fit into this picture predominantly is staff to staff communication. So that we're trying to work with the tribal staff with regard to very specific projects. And it doesn't really rise to the level of being a government to government agreement or conversation. But that's something that council still has to work through.
Okay, so to be specific, if we were to receive a request for a canoe landing on one of our properties, is that staff to staff? Is that government to government? Because I know that will be coming at some point soon.
I think that's a staff decision along with the Land Bank Commission. That's perfectly appropriate.
Good, that's a good answer. Okay.
Anything else on this? All right, let's move on. Okay, I wanted to take some time to address some of the things that we hear about fairly routinely, so that we have correct information circulating rather than rumor and innuendo, which there's quite a lot of in the community, not just in regard to us, but in general. And so we've got kind of a smorgasbord of questions and things that we've heard that I'm going to attempt to respond to in this presentation. So let's go on. And some of these you'll have seen before. Okay, so the first one, doesn't the land bank already own half the county? We actually have heard this statement made on a number of occasions. Next slide. No, we do not. Keep going. So, sorry, we've had a chat pop up. That's a little distracting. So this is a map of our preserves and conservation easements across the islands. Go on to the next slide. And the question is, something that you can't read. This is a real challenge because on the screen, we can't really see the text in that block, but it's basically about how much property the land bank actually owns. And so continue to the next slide. I think that'll be visible.
People admitting into the Did it go?
Yes, so there's the answer, 4.5%. That is our ownership. That's it.
That's
The other numbers come from, I think, some confusion in terms of what is presented in the assessor's statement of assessments, and we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so this is the county acreage by use. And so what you can see here is that 83% of the county is privately owned. I think that number's actually gone up a little bit. This is a year old, so we need to revise this. In terms of other, and what people, I think, react to when they see this kind of pie chart or see a number is the fact that only 53%, I think it is, of the county is assessed at market value. There are other programs in place which mean you don't have to pay market value. So these are things like senior exemptions or disabled exemptions, properties that are in open space, properties that are in timber, current use timber or agriculture, or designated forest land. So those are all private properties, but are in special tax categories. For us, you can see our slice there, that 5,000 acres is what we own. The rest of that 17% is other agencies. In terms of conservation land, you're really talking about 16.5%. That last half is things like port properties, school properties, other county-owned properties. So just trying to clarify this, that we're actually a pretty small player in terms of the overall ownership of county land base. Next slide. Okay, so another question that's come in is about how we've spent our money, what's happened when we've acquired properties. And there have been some assertions that we pay too much for property. We went back through all of our transactions from the beginning of the program, nearly wrapping up that analysis. So these numbers could change a little bit, but not a whole lot. And this is really what we learned. So we took a look at, first of all, the number of transactions. So you can see it's 75, with 7 of those being donations. Those are outright purchases at the top. The second line down I'll come to in a minute. That's about conservation easement purchases. But for outright purchases, the appraised value total is 83.7 million. Now, it's important to recognize too that we don't always have an appraised value for some of these properties. In some cases, we've used assessed values, which may underrepresent the actual market value of the property. We've had 1 or 2 cases where we've had to estimate special circumstances allowed us to move forward with those purchases, not having a clear understanding of appraised value. But that's really pretty close. So appraised value, 83.7. What has the land bank spent? That's about 50 million. So considerably under appraised value. Now, it's not that that was the total that was paid for those properties. More was paid. The way we were able to do that was by finding partners and grants. So if you move to the right, you can see 33.5 million came from partners or grants for specific projects. That gets you pretty close to that 83 million number, actually very close to it. We also got other contributions for other things, non-acquisition partner contributions. Those are things like the stewardship funds that the Preservation Trust has created for Turtleback and Mount Grant and Beaverton Marsh Preserve. And then donations of property. So we've received roughly $6 million worth of property donations. People who have just either given us, or in some cases, it's been a bequest. But we've really come by some amazing properties because we've got some very generous people out there. The last column on the right is assists on other projects. So those are things like the Mitchell Hill acquisition by the National Park Service, which we played a really key role in the transaction and also helping to secure the funding for that purchase. And the Webb property also just nearby Mitchell Hill. So we've had a number of those assists where we're not taking ownership of the property, but we've played a key role in making it happen. So our total partner contributions are at that 56.3 million number for outright acquisitions in those other categories. We move down into conservation easement purchases. There are a few things which are important to understand. First of all, the number of transactions, 35 of those were purchased, 14 were donations. We don't really have a good handle on the appraised value of those donations. In a lot of cases, those are just not made available to us. We don't know what the value is because that's the private landowner's business. So we've got some holes there in terms of, what the actual appraised value was. We know what we've spent on those 35 acquisitions, which is a little bit more than 8 million. And we can see what we've gotten from partners. One thing I will note, you can see the difference here in conservation easement acquisitions and partnering on specific transactions. It's much more difficult to find partners for conservation easement transactions than it is for outright acquisitions. This is one of the key factors, honestly, as to why sometimes it's actually cheaper to purchase a property outright than it is to purchase a conservation easement. Because we just can't find the grants, can't find the partner for the conservation easement transactions. In any case, we have gotten a lot of donations. We are estimating that at about 5 million. I think it's significantly higher than that, but very hard for us to get a really clear number on it. I think that's a good approximate number. In the end, if you go down to the bottom row, what you can see is that we've spent 57.8 million, and from partners, we've secured 62 million. So we're certainly above that 1-to-1 ratio that we've been talking about. We'll be taking a closer look at that conservation easement, one that's still a work in progress. The first one about outright acquisitions, we've pretty much completed that work. So, question?
About grant contributions, does that fall under partner?
Yes.
Oh, it does, okay.
Yes.
So it'd be interesting to break that out too, how many grants we've gotten versus preservation trust, which is significant.
And those are grants only for acquisition projects, not for stewardship.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on this point? I don't know if there.
I think it's a great slide. Yeah, tells a lot.
We've spent quite a bit of time on
I'm
this.
sure you have.
Okay, next one. All right, the age-old land bank taking land off the tax rolls and creating higher taxes. And I will remind everyone that that's the statement. We're not making that assertion in this slide. I went back to correct the phrasing, recognizing that someone could just pull this slide and say this is what's happening, but that's not the case. It's just the question we've gotten from the community. So next slide. Okay, here's the reality of where we are in terms of overall land value in the county. In the latest statement of assessments from the assessor, the total taxable value of real estate in the county is $14.1 billion. That's gone up significantly. Last year, I think it was 12.4. So our property values are going up. I'll remind people, this is taxable value. So this is assessed value. It's not necessarily market value, but it's what you're being taxed on. If you look at our properties, again, our taxable value, you would think would be higher than that $60 million number. The reason it's not is because 75% of the properties that we purchased are in those special tax classifications. For example, designated forest land. Designated forest land, people pay a very small amount on annually. So the taxable value of what we required can be quite low because of that. So our total is 0.41%, less than 0.5% of the total, which is reflected in that dollar bill, $50 bill, $100 bill, I think it is.
Does this assessor keep current the assessments on our properties?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, so this is the current total. All right, next slide.
I was so enthralled.
Okay, so if you go through the exercise of figuring out what this might mean, should we go through the hypothetical exercise of adding the properties that we have back onto the tax rolls, but keeping the overall amount of taxes collected the same. This is what you come to. It costs about $15 for a $750,000 property. But that's not the whole picture either. So next slide. The reality is that properties that are adjacent to preserves do get a bump in value. If you remove those from public ownership, you would lose that bump as well. So the question is really, what would it cost? It may be nothing. Totally possible. All right, next slide. Also, I think it's really important for people to understand when they're thinking about taxes, what our tax rate is in this county. It is the lowest in the state on average among other counties.
Yeah.
So you take that $5.86, which has gone down, as you'll see when we go through to the next slide. But if you had the same value property in Island County, you'd pay 25% more in taxes. If you were in Whitman County, you'd pay 140% more. So we're at the bottom as far as this goes. Next slide.
Can I ask,
Yes.
what would it take for them to change our tax rate?
You mean change it and increase the tax rate? or-
Right, because I know maybe this is a rabbit hole we don't want to go down right
Yeah.
now, but I'm just curious about the process, because I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so the county is limited, all counties and municipalities are limited to a 1% increase in
that's that.
their tax levy.
Okay.
So that's balanced out among all properties. And so when they increase the value of properties, when your market, not your market value, your taxable value goes up, your assessed value goes up. They're not going to be able to go beyond that 1% overall. So you'll see your tax rate come down. In some cases, it goes up. It depends on where you fall on that spectrum of properties. The average tax rate for 2024 is actually now at $5.47 per $1,000. So it remains low. you know, if you have a waterfront property here, that's, got a taxable value of $10 million, you'll be certainly paying significant property taxes on that. But, if you have that property in King County, you're probably paying, close to double.
Wow. Don't tell anyone else.
All right, next slide. So this question of conservation and property taxes, this is a slide I pulled together some time back. I need to update it. So this is from 2018. But what I did here was look at the average tax rates for counties and measure that against how much private ownership there is in those counties. So moving to the right is increasing private ownership. You can see we're out there with that 83% in private ownership. And on the vertical axis is the property tax rate. So what this shows, we did do a regression analysis on this to show that there's a positive correlation between having more property in private ownership and increased taxes. So not only does conservation not necessarily increase property taxes, but the reverse really is often true. It's more expensive to provide services to properties that have been developed than properties that are in conservation. So as you have more development and you have more private ownership, typically your taxes are going to be higher. That's just the reality. Next slide. All right, made the point there. I forgot I had the second one. Okay, this is one that came up recently, which I heard about specifically in regard to where I live, which is north of Katy Mountain, our Katy Mountain Preserve. The idea that we purchased properties out there only because I lived there. Well, that's not true. First of all, I don't live next to the preserve. I would invite anyone out to meet my neighbors. They're quite different from having a preserve as a neighbor, I can tell you that for sure. But not only that, if you go on to the next slide, we have 377 direct neighbors to our, to our 39 preserves. It's kind of remarkable that no current or past staff live next to a preserve. And I'll mention that our new employee doesn't actually live on his family-owned property down there at Wat Mount. So we're keeping this intact. In any case, there have been 3 commissioners in the past who've owned property that is next to a preserve. 2 of them donated conservation easements on their own property. The third owned a piece of property next to Turtleback after it was acquired and came onto the commission and went off the commission without playing any role in that acquisition. So no, the answer to this question is just no. And we've got a lot of reasons why we acquire property. If you want to know them, you need to look at our mandate. That's what we're going by. We're looking at the different values that these properties have. That's how we make decisions about purchases, not on something like this. So no, this is not true. Okay, next slide. When is enough enough? We keep going through this one, but I think it's worth repeating. We can go on to the next slide. So it's important to think about context. What's happening in the world around us? We can see that things are changing dramatically. Situations are getting worse. I read yesterday morning about a drought in Southern Africa, which has put 20 million people at acute risk of starvation. So that's just one story from one day. Every day brings a new story. So conservation is going to be important in this context. particularly when you think about the fact, and I think we can go on to the next slide, that population is not static. Populations change, people shift where they're going. Actually, that's one more slide, but let's talk about climate deterioration and what that looks like here. So a number of things we've seen happen, from bulk kelp declines and overall declines in our marine environment. You can see that's a algal bloom above, fires, more trees dying, more people's wells going dry earlier in the season. So we're seeing a lot of changes happen right here in the islands as well. Next slide. And I just wanted to throw this one up there because I think people have, they can become complacent about what's around them and not really have a good understanding about what can actually happen, what is allowed under current zoning. So this is a random area on San Juan Island of about 1,800 acres. And currently you've got 173 parcels with 90 residences. Next slide. This is what you could have. Through subdivision, you can create more parcels. You can fully populate those parcels with residences. So going from 90 to 230 residences.
Egg like Beaver Valley Road intersection?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was Bay Area.
Yeah. So, and you can take a random shot just about anywhere that's not conservation land or property that's under conservation easement. You'll see a similar thing. So there can be quite a lot more development that could occur here. People need to be aware of that. Things will not stay the same. Or next slide. Okay, this is one where I've gotten some pushback because it shows the amount of public land in the surrounding counties. And so we're at 16.5, probably closer to 17% in San Juan County, and you can see the mainland counties are far higher. Well, a lot of that is because of the federal ownership in those counties, particularly the more mountainous areas, a lot of Forest Service property. So it's not really a fair comparison, and we're not putting this up there to suggest that we should have 62% in public ownership like Skagit County does. It's just to show the context that our public ownership is quite low. If you want an example, removing the larger federal ownerships, you can go a little bit closer to home, the next slide, and just look at the city of Anacortes, which has 30% of its land in public ownership. So there's no federal ownership involved there. That's just what they've done as a community. There is a state park, Washington State Park is there as well. And that looks like the end of our presentation. No, we've got, I think, a couple more things. Technical difficulty.
Find people who live with that. Online doesn't know that that's what's happening.
All right, next slide. And this is really the fundamental question that we need to answer when we ask about how much is enough. We have a lot of species which have particular requirements for habitat. And so you can see the pileated woodpecker at the upper left, which generally pairs of pileateds have 200-acre home ranges. And within that home range, you need to have suitable habitat, which means larger diameter trees, standing dead trees, and lots of carpenter ants, which compose the vast majority of what pileated's diet. Also a good reason to be careful about what you're spraying around your home, because it can end up in the pileated's diet. We've got a lot of carpenter ants out there in the woods. We need to keep them. you can see the red-breasted sapsucker there at the bottom has similar requirements to pileateds, and sapsuckers are declining in our area. Bluebirds we've had reintroduced. They need open spaces, also lots of bugs, salamanders, wetland areas. It's a great horned owl on the right, also very large home range requirement. And then at the top, the salmon. There's a strong relationship between what happens in the terrestrial environment to the health of salmon populations. Generally, what we're known for in the San Juans is hosting juvenile salmon. So salmon spawn in rivers, they come down the Fraser River, come out of the Skagit River. They end up around the islands in that in-between period looking for things to eat. A lot of what they eat is actually terrestrial based. So it's bugs coming off of the land, coming out of wetland areas, blowing in the wind. So maintaining that terrestrial habitat as a food source for fish is a very real thing. Okay, next slide. So we did ask this question in our Engage survey, which was part of the strategic plan, just to see what people thought about when we were going forward and looking at doing future acquisitions. And this is really pretty interesting result. The ecological category really jumped off the page here. People are really feeling strongly about trying to preserve the best of what we've got left. The integrity of the environment, how those systems work. It's just something that people are thinking a lot about. And you can see down below, protection of shorelines also jumped out as something, and that takes you back to that whole question of the relationship between the terrestrial and marine environment. We have the other things that are also important to people, but those two really jumped off the page. Next question. Next slide, rather. Okay, this is just a map of our potential conservation areas. When we look at where we should prioritize acquisition, we've got a lot of things that go into making that determination. So we've got habitat conservation plans. We have what landscapes we anticipate being most resilient in the face of climate change, salmon recovery priorities, resource lands, agricultural and forest lands, where we might have an opportunity for public access, and also preservation trust priority areas. They've gone through an extensive analysis to look at what jumps up to the front for them. So you can see those white areas are our potential conservation areas. We've got a number of different categories. I'm not going to take you through those today, but as you can see, a lot of this is around larger landscapes and keeping those contiguous forest areas or undeveloped areas intact. That's what we can do. I will just go back to that question of how much property we own now, 4.5%. We can add a couple percentage points to that. That's really all we're going to be capable of doing. Should the REIT be reauthorized, the conservation REIT. We are not an all-powerful agency by any means. We're a small operation and we have the ability to conserve some spectacular places, but it's very limited. We just don't have the resources to do a whole lot there. So.
And one thing to add, that we're always working with William Sellers. We don't do eminent domain.
Correct. So part of this also shows you that we have an overarching strategy, and when we're doing acquisitions, they fit into that strategy. But by nature, they are opportunistic because we have to have a willing seller. So there'll be pieces within these larger areas and where we'll be successful. It's hard for us to predict exactly where those are going to be. And that is all I've got.
Great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Any questions for Lincoln?
I just think that this is a thing that should be really put out publicly in the meetings. Because it really covers a lot of this.
I did have a question on the pie that was really valuable is where's agricultural on that pie? It doesn't call out.
It actually is called out. It's just that you can't see it on the screen.
I couldn't
This
see
is
it.
on current, it might have been on current view.
It's
Can you go back
probably
to
in
that?
current
So
use.
that would be
Can you go back
nice
to
to
that?
add to that for clarity.
Well,
Because we call out forestry, so
Yeah.
that's clear.
yeah, I need to update that pie chart on the latest statement of assessments, so I can do that.
I'd like to ask,
That's
to what
cool.
extent is this information available to the public through our website, or should it be available to the public through our website, or some of it, or in a different format? I mean, is this the kind of thing, the kind of story that we should be telling through something that the public would easily access, instead of having to be at the right meeting?
Yes,
I'm interested in
So
that piece
pieces-
for communications.
pieces of it are available on our website, and obviously, everything we do in these meetings is recorded and put on YouTube. So we have, we can give you the precise time of a presentation if you want to see it. We'll put PowerPoints up on the website also. We're still in the process, and I think we're gonna hear more about this in our communications update. But we're trying to get more and more of this information out there.
I would agree that, the statements that you put up there, haven't we already bought, or we've already bought, I can't remember what they are. They should be prefaced with question.
Yes,
Gee,
yeah.
You brought that up, but I think you should go back and do that.
I rephrased everything but that one. I realized I missed that.
And continuing to stress the history of the land bank and how, how the land bank was formed, because I think that as a really unique piece, that this isn't something that every county can do, and that piece, I think, is almost the most valuable when you think about what we have to hold on to. And I heard from a few people really wanting to know if in fact the REAP were to go away, can it come back 10 years later? Are we at all grandfathered in with having had it one time? And I think there's some legal people potentially working on that question, but keep us informed on that.
Would it be possible to have this information digested in a series of articles that would be published so that people can readily access it? It would be very helpful.
And where do you think are good
I think
avenues
once you
for
write it, you just send it to all
the papers?
channels. Yeah,
That's a good point.
yeah, different papers, different online platforms.
Like one per month in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Can we sign you up?
I'll twist her arm when I got.
I think another question that comes up that people ask, and I don't really know the answer, is, what happens if the land bank doesn't pass? What happens to the lands?
Well, that's a great question, and I think the reality is, the commission will really have to look closely at, what properties, we own, and come to some determinations. A lot of the properties are protected by virtue of, working with these partners. So when we get a grant, the state requires us to put a deed of right on the property that will protect it regardless of ownership. We're working with a preservation trust and they're doing a conservation easement similar. But there are properties which I think would be in question for sure. So that will be a very painful process, I would say, for the commission to go through all the holdings and make decisions.
And Lincoln, I think we need to, at every opportunity, say this is not a vote to get rid of the land bank. It's a vote on the major funding source for the land bank. Because the land bank exists as a function of county government and will continue to do so unless dissolved. this is the major funding portion that allows us to do what we do with this organization. And I think there's just a slight difference there in thinking.
I think it's thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, just from the perspective of affordable housing, you know, public funding for affordable housing has disappeared, and REIT is such an important mechanism to make that happen. And if this were to go away, we'll also, you know, the housing crisis that we're experiencing will also worsen too.
Like, I have a question in chat.
Yes.
What is happening with the Caboo Hill Road property? I don't know if I said that correctly.
Caboo Hill?
Caboo Hill, yeah.
Yeah, this is one which we've been thinking about reselling. It's a 10-acre property on Orcas Island. This is on, Entrance Mountain, separate from our, major preserve there. And was purchased with the idea of reselling it, and limiting the development opportunity, so that, views from surrounding areas wouldn't be impacted. So we started down the road of, looking at reselling that property. It's kind of stalled out for now, but I think we'll come back to that. That's certainly one which I think makes sense, for the commission to go ahead and sell. In general, the land bank has not sold any properties, unless that resale provision is included in the project summary up front. So it'll be stated, the goal here is not to own the property, it's to put a conservation easement or somehow protect it, in whole or in part, and then resell it. So that one's still in that category.
Okay. That seems to be the only question in the chat.
There was, Amy made a comment during the,
She did, I was gonna pass that on to, Amy's comment was, she asked that all requests for access to land bank lands by anyone, tribe or otherwise, be provided to the commissioners prior to staff making a decision for informational purposes.
Very good.
I have a question, maybe this is answered already, but, if the effort to, renew the REIT mechanism fails this year, can we try then?
Yes,
How many times?
there's no limit.
There's no limit.
There is, the funding is authorized through, the end of November in 2026. So, that's when there would be no more conservation REIT coming through the door. One thing to remember is that the affordable housing REIT, is tied to this. You're required to have a fully funded land bank REIT in order to be eligible, to collect that affordable housing REIT. If this REIT goes away, it can come back. People 5 years later can decide to do it again. However, the way the state law is written, I think it's doubtful that the affordable housing REIT could be reinstated.
Yeah, why is that?
There's a specific requirement for when, you have to have had a fully funded, land bank, which was written into the law as something like 1993. So if you have a gap, there's a big question about whether you can now still be eligible to, come back and try again with the affordable housing.
Well,
and so there is a legal opinion on exactly how that would be, defined, is not forthcoming yet, is that correct?
No, there's been no clear directive. I mean, it's one thing is crystal clear that in
They're
the
linked.
state law, you have to have a fully funded land bank
Right.
REIT in order to be eligible to collect the affordable housing REIT.
Right. So it's just a matter of defining what the term would be for the affordable housing. If we were not to be reauthorized.
It could also be good to just state how many land banks there are in the country. I believe we're the only one in the state.
We're the only in the state, for sure.
We're the only one in the state and 2 in the country.
3.
3, so keep that front and center in people's minds.
Okay, Oh, Sean, yeah.
Has there been an analysis on land transactions and how, what percentage of the land transactions are made by people from outside buying land versus
Yes.
yeah, transactions among, residents?
Yeah, so there are a couple of interesting statistics there. Over the life of the program, the revenue that we've received from REIT, 60% of that has come from external buyers.
Oh, wow.
So from people who are moving here and basically paying. And also more recently, there's been a really clear trend that a large percentage of the REIT is coming from high end sales. So in 2022, 70% of the REIT was paid on transactions of $1 million or more.
70% is what you said.
Yes.
That is great information too, from perspective of, residents benefiting from external money.
Right.
Yeah,
And large
yeah, and,
investments.
Right.
Out of state or out of the county.
right. That's true.
Good questions.
Yeah, great.
Keep them coming. We are gonna take a break right now. What time is it?
It's already 7:10.
What would you like to do? How, should we take a 5-minute break? Okay, we'll come back at 7:15. We can take 7 minutes.